Good afternoon. I've chosen Eleanor Roosevelt as my prominent public speaker speech today. I feel that Eleanor Roosevelt has impacted each and every one of us in some way, shape, or form. I'd like to educate you a little bit in regards to the history of Eleanor and some of the accomplishments she made in her life. Eleanor Roosevelt was born in New York City in 1884. She was born in a very high class environment, but became an orphan at a young age. Her mother died when she was the age of 8 from diphtheria, which is a bacteria that grows in the back of your throat and causes problems with breathing. 2 years later, her father died of alcoholism. So at the age of 10, Eleanor became an orphan and she went to live with her grandmother. When she was 15, she enrolled in an all girls school outside of London, a school called Allenswood. She was educated under the influence of a French mistress, which was very radical and full of life. This mistress educated the students with knowledge and taught them how to be leaders. Eleanor has been known to tell many people that the years that she had at Allenswood were the best years of her life. Eleanor became active in social reform movement for the Progressive Era. The Progressive Era movement was a period of widespread social activism and political reform across the United States. The main goal for the progressive movement was to eliminate corruption in the government. Eleanor was greatly influenced by her uncle Theodore Roosevelt, the President of the United States. He exposed her to people in different social economic classes for her to learn and understand besides her own practice. He also taught her organizational political reform and the process necessary for legalizing efforts in fair labor practices. Eleanor was not interested in living the upper class society as her relatives were. She met a circle of elite women that interested her in the social reform efforts and helped to improve poverty that existed with disgraceful living and working conditions. These group of women formed an organization that was known as the Junior League. A settlement house is a community center that helps improve the lives of those workers that are primarily immigrants. They teach them work skills and how to better take care of themselves. The National Consumers League was developed, and Eleanor volunteered at the reform organization. Her work consisted of visiting multi-family apartments where workers worked and lived in the same unsafe working environments. These were also known as sweatshops. Her first visit was a group of individuals who were expected to make thousands of tiny artificial flowers that would be used for hats in manufacturing companies. These individuals were paid such little money that they continued to be in poverty. The National Consumers League joined in to support the hat makers who worked at the sweatshops and decided to strike against their employer. They wanted to offer them better wages and working conditions. Eleanor visited workers in overcrowded and unsanitary apartments, making notes of their condition and the overall safetiness for these individuals. She helped this become public knowledge by submitting letters to newspapers, press releases were done, and other forms of media exposure. They also informed the public of the Consumer League White Label campaign. The Consumer's White Label was an endorsement given to manufacturers of products that were made under certain labor conditions, such as the elimination of unpaid overtime and hiring individuals under the age of 16. Eleanor Roosevelt married Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1905. They had 6 children, but one died at a very young age. Franklin Roosevelt suffered a polio attack in 1921. Eleanor stepped forward to help any way she could to keep his political career going. He taught her to investigate and observe social conditions when she traveled throughout the United States. She became his eyes and ears and trusted reporter. Eleanor's relationship with Franklin was strong on the political side, but not so strong on the social side. Eleanor learned that Franklin was having an affair with her secretary. She was devastated and felt very betrayed. She actually wanted to leave Franklin, but his mother talked her out of it and encouraged her to stay for the public eye and offered to support her financially. Eleanor did agree to stay. However, she got more involved in the political world, the reform circles, and made very aggressive friends. Franklin Roosevelt became president in 1933. The reserved, quiet Eleanor was becoming much more confident in coming out of her shyness. She started to make public appearances on behalf of her husband and found a variety of ways to promote the welfare of the less needy. She used her position as First Lady to promote civil rights, humanitarian causes, children's causes, and women's issues. She even published her own newspaper called My Day, and she wrote in it daily. She also focused on helping the country's poor and stood against racism, and in World War II, she even traveled across seas to see the U.S. troops. Eleanor Roosevelt dramatically changed the role of the First Lady. She showed the world that the First Lady was an important part of the American politics. President Franklin valued Eleanor's intelligence and viewpoints. It had been known that he referred to her for many presidential matters. Eleanor Roosevelt has come to define what it means to be the First Lady of the United States. Eleanor was the First Lady to hold a press conference at the White House, and no men were allowed. This allowed great opportunities for young female reporters to get experience and confidence. After President Roosevelt died in 1945, Eleanor told the public that she wasn't going to be in public service anymore, and she's been known for stating, "The story's over, everyone." But the story wasn't over for Eleanor. Eleanor served as a delegate to the United Nations General Assembly, became chair for the UN's Human Rights Commission. She was a member of the Human Rights Commission, and she even helped write the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. Eleanor Roosevelt is an amazing lady that helped develop the world as it is today. Let's look at a few of her accomplishments. The United States Civil Rights Movement, as you know, is very common with our law we have. Eleanor witnessed the hardships after the Great Depression. She received field reports detail lacking the Federal Emergency Relief Administration programs and learned of all the individuals going through hardship. She first visited the African Americans when she toured a poverty-stricken area the summer she became the First Lady. She did not recognize the depth of the institutional racism until she pressured the Substance Homestead Administration. Eleanor died before things could be finalized with the United States civil rights, but as we know today, we have our civil rights law. Martin Luther King summarized her commitment to racial justice as the impact of her personality and its unwavering devotion to high principle and purpose cannot be contained in a single day or era. In regards to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, this information was stated from the abouteducation.com. In 1946, facing the incredible violations of the human rights, the victims of World War II and what they suffered, the United Nations established a Human Rights Commission. Eleanor Roosevelt was one of the members. She had been appointed a delegate of the United Nations by President Harry Truman. She worked on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, actually writing parts of its text. She helped by keeping the language direct and clear and focused on the human dignity. These are very brief descriptions of the real stories of what Eleanor did for the United States. But we know that she's an amazing lady, and how we live our life today has been beneficial. In closing, I would like to give you a couple quotes that Eleanor developed. Learn from the mistakes of others. We cannot live long enough to make all of them ourselves. And her most common, a woman is like a tea bag. You never know how strong she is until you put her in hot water. Thank you for your time today.